folks, welcome once again to another edition of The Observer right here on Synergy TV with yours truly, Mikee K. Thanks for being with us, and it's always a pleasure having you. We're going to kickstart things off with Senior Lecturer for the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Gabriel Hossain. All right, so good evening, Dr. Hossain, and welcome to this edition of The Observer with yours truly, Mikee K, right here on Synergy TV. Pleasant good evening to you.
Hello, Mikey, and hello to your viewers.
Let's dive right into it. What is femicide?
Femicide is the killing of women where that killing results as a basis, on the basis of gender, and is a form of gender-based violence. In other words, femicide is when a woman is killed or a girl is killed because she is a woman or girl, where she is targeted, for example, killed as part of rape, where she is killed as part of domestic violence, where she is killed as part of war, and so those kinds of examples.
Right. And of course, does it have an impact on all women and girls, or just those personally impacted by the death?
Oh, all the data and probably all the women in Trinidad and Tobago will tell you that when one woman is killed, that other women feel similarly unsafe, particularly depending on the killing. So many were affected by the killings of Ashanti Riley and Andrea Barrett because they happened in taxis, and we know that traveling by taxis is considered to be hugely unsafe for women and girls. We know that when a woman is killed by her partner or by her ex-partner, that the approximately 10,000 women that are currently living in abusive partnerships in Trinidad and Tobago most likely themselves also feel a greater sense of unease that maybe it could be me next. There was a recent killing which I don't think we can spend a lot of time discussing because it's in front of the courts, where a teenage girl was killed as a result of what media reports say was being beaten. And in that case, the newspaper reports allege or report that it was a way of disciplining for adolescent sexuality, boyfriend problems. And I would consider that a femicide because, of course, we threaten and discipline and beat and punish girls around issues of adolescent sexuality in a way we just don't for boys, even though more boys are sexually active from a young age than girls. This just doesn't appear on our radar. So even those kinds of deaths, I think, can be considered femicides.
Yeah. And when you look at it, how much of this is rooted, would you say, in gender inequality and systemic gender-based discrimination?
All of it. All of it is rooted in our beliefs and values. All of it is rooted in our norms. So let me give you a really simple, little crude example that I think works. Nobody practices cannibalism, which is the eating of other human beings, because it's just so taboo, so, not tolerated, so outside the bounds of what is accepted in our society that it does not even occur. The fact that the kinds of violence that women and girls experience, the fact that that violence occurs is because, and occurs in the numbers that it does, occurs across the life cycle in the way it does, occurs whether girls and women are in the home or on the street or in their workplaces or in a taxi and so on, is because such violence remains so acceptable, so normalized, because there's such families will tolerate and reproduce and silence that kind of abuse. And so that is what reproduces it. If we did not accept violence, in particular gendered violence, that is that women are the neck, women should show men a particular kind of obedience and respect, women must not decide to leave relationships, that decision should be made for them, that girls must not go part way and then say no, that at that point you've given up the right to consent, that marriage gives up the right to consent, and therefore rape can happen within marriage, but it isn't really rape. As long as those values are so prevalent and accepted in our society, then those behaviors will follow. Our job, and what this program and so many others are doing, is to try to change those beliefs and values. And as they change, then those practices will also, hopefully, in a vision we all hold, also disappear.
But one would think that we've evolved from that. I mean, you hear certain sectors of society saying, you mean this is still happening? Do some people still have to put their stamp of masculinity to show that they still have, part of this culture? Why is that? Why is that we haven't evolved past that? When you hear people say, I can't believe this is still happening.
Yes. Well, I think that's an excellent question to ask men, because men are talking with other men. So men know from the time they are in primary or secondary school what kind of jokes pass, what kind of talk passes, how it is you learn to look and speak about women and girls. I mean, boys and men are the best ones because they grow up as innocent human beings. Men, children are born, they're not gendered, right? They learn from a early age, and will be able to say, oh yeah, I was able to hear how to perform masculinity, how to wheel my body, where to put my hands, how to look at women, how not to call out other men, because then, that could lead to you being bullied or excluded or named or victimized, and so the fact is it does still exist. Now, men have been changing as the feminist movement has sought to challenge traditional gender roles, and that's been excellent to see. And in fact, so many men are supportive of ending gender-based violence, transforming gender roles, sharing the care in households and before, that it speaks to the hopefulness in this long revolution. But it still exists because many men and women and families and religious leaders and politicians are still invested in these very beliefs and values in a real way. Anytime somebody is told that one person is the head and the other person is the neck, two human beings that are, have equal human rights, you are basically encoding inequality as natural and normal and biological and divine in the family. And so we do tolerate these values. And for men, a lot of men ask themselves, if I was not the protector, if I wasn't all of these things that are typically associated with manhood, what would make me a man? What would differentiate me from women? How would how would the society be ordered in a way that gives me a sense of clarity about the expectations I need to meet? So what we're doing here is very destabilizing, very worrisome for some people. And if we associate these behaviors with our childhood, our parents who we admire, ourselves growing up in the world, to challenge and change them can be a very uncomfortable process. And so it can make people feel uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable at it, yeah. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Hossain right here on The Observer. We'll be right back.
Tired of being uncomfortable, sweating it out in a hot car? Then bring that mobile oven to Ryan Air AC, experts in auto air conditioning. We service any make or model vehicle. Free diagnostics. Most repairs done while you wait. Ryan Air AC provide warranties for replacement parts installed at our service center. We also stock a wide range of OEM replacement parts. Located number 41 Kane Farm Road, Tacarigua. To make a service appointment, give us a call at 640-5828. Ryan Air AC, over 30 years in the auto air conditioning industry. Get your fresh and frozen meats at Dabadi Meat Mart. We provide healthy chickens at competitive prices. Also duck, lamb, goat, turkey drumsticks, pigtail, chicken parts, and more. Customers can have their fresh and frozen meats cut up free of charge. Dabadi Meat Mart, located corner Larry Sauce North Road and Eastern Main Road, Dabadi. Open Wednesday to Saturday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. You can place your pickup orders by calling 642-2287. We adhere to all COVID protocols for the safety of you and your loved ones. Looking to upgrade or purchase a new computer? Then visit Cyrus Technology, located number 83 Arima Old Road, Aruka. Cyrus Technology also carries a large stock of computer parts, such as hard drives, optical drives, video cards, monitors, desktops, power supplies and cases, and much more. Cyrus Technology for computer parts, new computer sales and services. Give us a call at 646-3741 or 681-8762 or email us at cyrustech@hotmail.com.
And we're back, and again, we're joined by Dr. Gabrielle Hossain, who is the Senior Lecturer for the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies, correctly. Let me ask you something, Dr. Hossain. Would it be fair to say that many of these issues are driven by the fact that violence against women continue because it's accepted, tolerated, and even justified to some extent?
Absolutely. So the thing is that when you are a man in the world, you move about the world very differently. You know, you're not told how to sit and make sure and cross your legs, don't have them open, you know, don't smile at men at the taxi stand, or don't smile back, or, you know, you're not told to watch your behavior, your body, everything, in some vain hope of protecting yourself. So we live different realities, women and men, and as long as women are told, you know, what precautions they need to keep to be safe, and as long as we use the language of protecting our women, we are not using the language we should, which is that women have a right to live free, safe, and self-determining lives. They don't want to be protected, they want to be free. And so, yes, the beliefs and values that exist justify, explain, normalize the kinds of violence that women and girls experience. And this plays out in so many places. When you look, for example, at the difference between the incidence or prevalence of sexual violence, then you look at the reports, then you look at the convictions, you will see that there is a move from us knowing so many women who've experienced violence, whether it's sexual harassment violence or sexual abuse or sexual assault of some kind, all the way down to the convictions being absolutely minuscule. So there's a way that our beliefs and values filter through the systems that create a kind of impunity for sexual and physical violence against women and girls in so many ways.
Well, I guess we have a lot. We have a lot to do as far as moving forward. I mean, if you look at the fact that our culture here in Trinidad and Tobago is very much engineered by Bacchanal and Mobilang, as we say it, and that's part of the things that come out to justify. You know, she was horning, she was no good, she was using him. I mean, for the victim, it is an uphill battle. But when you look at it from an external factor as well, people making their contributions and weighing in, when do we start to recognize that, listen, that could be your daughter, that can be your sister, that can be your mother. So when you raise your hand, you're not just striking the individual that you may have this intimate relationship with, but basically you're striking at all women. When do we get to that point, and how do we get to that point?
Yes. You know, we say so many things that are just absolutely wrong when trying to understand these complex situations. Again, with the young girl that died, the 15-year-old that died last week, you know, the Guardian had a headline that said something to the effect of deviant behavior. And that was victim blaming at its greatest, because what victim blaming means is that you are in some way attributing the violence that happens to someone to their own behavior. That, oh, well, um, you were raped because you were flirting while drinking. So even though you said no, you were playing a game, right? And so that game, you couldn't just get away with that. Oh, well, because you're whining in the street. So clearly you're sending a message that you want somebody to hold on to your body without your consent. And so there is a way that the idea of consent and choice is one that we don't accept. I want to say something too about victim blaming, which is that we have an idea of perfect victims in our society. The women who were perfect wives until they were killed, or because they didn't leave, or perfect victims because they tried to leave, but we don't think about the kinds of women who disappear from our radar. So, sex workers and the kinds of violence that they experience. And, many, many men visit brothels, visit prostitutes, visit sex workers in our society, and they experience much higher rates of sexual assault, for example, which is that they are not able to consent to the job, to in a job, to what is happening to them. And yet, because they are not seen as good women, they are not deserving of our protection. We don't think about them as our women. And so we have to think not only, we have to think about the way the society discusses violence against women and girls, such that if you are not a perfect victim, then somehow the society has no compassion for you. Whereas what we want to do is put the lens instead on violence. We want to see all, like, I have never hit any of my partners, even if we've fallen out, even if we've had a fight. For me, the idea that you could hit a partner has to be something that becomes something we would never do. So rather than focusing on the victims of violence, we have to focus on the perpetration, the perpetrators, and what makes violence and approach that they use to take control of the circumstances in their lives, particularly, with those who are more vulnerable.
Yeah. But if you look at intimate femicide, and you've just illustrated something there, that there seems to be a very thin line. I mean, how do you interact with a partner who wants to be choked, and do you stop and say, listen, I believe there's a psychological problem here that we need to address, or do you just simply comply? How do you get
You
that,
mean like you mean
as
like,
far as
for
having
example,
that
wants to be
relationship
choked?
understood?
You mean you mean as part of, say, sexual pleasure and practice? Oh, that is very different. That, I
Oh.
mean, people have all kinds of sex, find all kinds of things exciting and interesting and, adventurous, but there is always the question of consent. So anybody that is involved in S&M practices, and there is nothing wrong with what anybody wants to do in the bedroom, absolutely, is that it must be combined with consent. You must know when somebody is saying this is pleasurable, this is consensual, and when somebody is saying no, stop, or their body language, is telling you, or there's a safe word. I mean, what happened there? These are not comparable things at all. So it is very important that we understand that violence is
Should there be prior dialogue as far as seeing
always,
that there's some compatibility as to you may enjoy
yeah,
something and your partner may not enjoy it, and because you don't want to end up in a
yes.
situation as a, why did you stop? I never told you to stop, and so again the
Oh,
line
you
is
mean
very
vice
blurry.
versa? It's not. It's not, because you should say, well, if saying no, stop, but not meaning it is part of what's exciting, then you need another safe word, right? You need to say, I like to say no, but when I really want you to stop, I'm going to say doubles, right?
Okay.
And you're going to be like, what, right? And that's going to mean it's this little no thing's not fun anymore. But we are having two different conversations. You are talking about sex,
Right.
right? Sex and rape are two different things. Rape is not sex. Rape has nothing to do with sex. Rape is the enactment of violence on another person's body through such things as penetration, right? That is not what sex is. Sex is an agreement to have some exchange of, sexual practice and pleasure
Yes,
between
right.
two individuals or whatever. It is not sex if it is non-consensual. It is violence. And this is such a great conversation because so often we don't understand violence in our society. For anybody, we think that violence, that is beating children with a belt, is discipline. We haven't gotten to the point in our public discourse where we can clearly see this not as discipline, but as violence. Like, we don't understand what being beaten does to the brain, does developmentally. Do you know that children who are 2 years old experience a higher degree of physical violence than children who are a little older? And can you imagine what that is doing to their brain developmentally at that time? And so you're saying, I mean, what you've done is something really important, which is that we need far more clarity in our society about so many things that we think are okay, such as physical beating as punishment or discipline, non-consensual sex, which is very common. Many women's first sexual experience, particularly if they are under 19 or 15 or between 15 and 18, is non-consensual. That is, they didn't exactly want it, but they didn't know how to say no properly, or they did say no and it wasn't heard, or they didn't fight hard enough, or they didn't feel safe, or they froze, or whatever it is. But we need to differentiate what are, safe, healthy, consensual practices, loving practices, peaceful practices, particularly in families and between partners, from violence. And we need to be so clear in our society about what constitutes violence and name it for exactly what it is.
Yeah. COVID pandemic, it's been 2 years of the lockdown, and of course we know how domestic violence affects women's health, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, even substance abuse. Have you witnessed an increase in the post-traumatic stress disorders?
So that's a great question. We have to keep in mind that unemployment has significantly increased in the society, and also that about 1/3 of families are single parent families, mostly woman headed households. And those families will most likely have even greater challenges meeting the family's economic needs. So it's really important that when we think about the pandemic, we don't only think about it as a public health challenge, we also think about it in terms of its economic effects that it's had, which of course are the ones that we should really be paying attention to now. Yes, we can see that a number of things have increased from the data. One is, of course, domestic violence. We can certainly expect that sexual abuse has increased because children were home for 2 years in extremely vulnerable circumstances. We know that where women have lost their jobs, it has led to greater economic dependence, or where they've been unable to make ends meet, it has also led to a return to traditional gender roles in the family, where maybe they had to stay home and take on childcare responsibilities to a greater extent, and so on. So we know that depression has risen amongst all women, men, and children. And that is a result also of the economic insecurity that many families are experiencing right now, particularly women headed households.
Let me ask you, last year more than 30 women in this country lost their lives to violence. And it appears, unfortunately, that we're witnessing that trend in 2020 as well. Where are we losing this? What is the gap that seems to be failing these women, or at least the process that's not working?
First of all, I want to make a huge plug for health and family life education in schools. There's a lot of resistance to the HFLE program because it is associated with sex ed. Sex ed is only one part of the program. We are currently integrating a gender-based violence component into the program. But as long as people resist the health and family life curriculum, which is not just about sexuality, but about self, about relationships, about healthy behaviors, and so on, they will block one of the few preventative approaches that we have, which is the ability to reach into schools, primary and secondary, and discuss gender issues and gender-based violence issues, much like we have been discussing here today, but in an age-appropriate way. So that's our first tool at our fingertips. And there's so much resistance to it, but I want to use this as an opportunity to really argue that this is where change can be made. The second is policing. We know that there is an under-policing of violence against women. When women come to the police to report DV, they are sent to a justice of the peace, and they are sent through the protection order process. However, we should keep in mind that violence against women under the DV Act, for example, that each of those things, from stalking to threats to different forms of violence, constitute crimes. They constitute crimes that the police have a responsibility to investigate and charge for, but which they mostly do not. So there's an under-policing and certainly an under-conviction. And then finally, we know that one of the major needs in our society is for psychosocial support, not just for women, but also for men. We have to remember that many men are also growing up with toxic masculinities, that is, masculinities that are defined by violence and control and a particular repressive relationship to their emotions. And they themselves may have grown up in dysfunctional and violent contexts, family context and community context. So we are failing as a society by not paying attention, certainly beginning in the schools, but also through community outreach, to the need for psychosocial services that can help create less violence as a response within families, between peer groups, such as in schools, between groups of men, such as in gangs, and certainly in terms of our public spaces of streets and transportation.
But it surprises us that in this day and age that many of these conversations are still defined as taboo. Yeah. And what's interesting is that you spoke about relationships, and if we underline that, what we have is coming up in a certain sector, certain society, of course, where there's no communication, where that is involved. It's not taught in the schools. And then how do you prepare for adulthood? Because any young lady would tell you, listen, I am all set for my wedding. They can tell you what kind of wedding they want, but what kind of marriage do you want? If two people are not compatible when it comes to understanding. For example, if you grew up in a home where someone would argue till they made that point, compared to someone who would simply say what they have to and walk off, when these two people come from these different backgrounds, what are we to expect?
That's why the health and family life curriculum is absolutely key, precisely because it teaches skills that are social and psychological skills to students, including conflict resolutions. And it is available for primary and secondary schools. And I just want to I'm literally working on integrating GBV in the curriculum myself with the University of the West Indies. And I just want to really tell every one of your viewers, please do not believe any hype that says that it is teaching kids about having sex and it is going to lead to more sex. It is not. The curriculum is meant to teach healthier notions of self, healthier relationships, including to family, peers, and community, and including in relation to sexuality. The thing is that the discussion we're having has been had for 30 years. The solutions are not rocket science. We need a different message from the priests and the pundits and the imams. Instead of teaching about, all kinds of other things when people go to their religious worship, they should be talking about ending violence in families. When they see that couples come to them and there are experiences of violence, they mustn't talk about forgiveness and love. They must talk about responsibility, and they must talk about, an absolute intolerance from, an intolerance to violence against anyone. We should not be beating our children with belts. We know that boys, the way we speak to boys from a very young age is much rougher, less loving, that boys are punished sometimes more severely because we have this idea that they can deal with toughness, they can deal with violence. And so we bring up boys to kind of harden themselves, and then we wonder why they do. So the changes can happen. I mean, I welcome this conversation because it's a conversation we want men to be having with men also, whether it's in the barbershops, whether it is, as I said, the priests and the pundits and the imams have a massive responsibility here. And then, the men in the sports groups, the men in the WhatsApp groups. If men could talk to other men and say, listen, there is just some things that we are not going to tolerate. You will be outside of this group if we find out X, Y, or Z, right? Or we are going to recognize when you need help and say, listen, this is, stop everything because what you are doing here is unhealthy for your family. If we could bring men on board in this movement to create a more peaceful society, then I think we could make faster change.
Yeah. Dr. Hossain, any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I want us to recognize that the ultimate goal here is for men and women to be valued, not for meeting masculine or feminine ideals, but simply because they are. And if we could bring up children to be valued for being good human beings, kind and loving, both boys and girls, we would be transforming ourselves as adults through that responsibility, and we would be transforming the world.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It has been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. Looking forward to, of course, joining you sometime again in the near future. Keep up the good work and do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
And to you and your view.
Hey, folks, we're going to take a quick break and be right back. Stay right here. It's The Observer on Synergy TV with yours truly, Mikee K. We'll be right back.
Tired of being uncomfortable, sweating it out in a hot car? Then bring that mobile oven to Ryan Air AC, experts in auto air conditioning. We service any make or model vehicle. Free diagnostics. Most repairs done while you wait. Ryan Air AC provide warranties for replacement parts installed at our service center. We also stock a wide range of OEM replacement parts. Located number 41 Kane Farm Road, Tacarigua. To make a service appointment, give us a call at 640-5828. Ryan Air AC, over 30 years in the auto air conditioning industry. Get your fresh and frozen meats at Dabadi Meat Mart. We provide healthy chickens at competitive prices. Also duck, lamb, goat, turkey drumsticks, pigtail, chicken parts, and more. Customers can have their fresh and frozen meats cut up free of charge. Dabadi Meat Mart, located corner Larry Sauce North Road and Eastern Main Road, Dabadi. Open Wednesday to Saturday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. You can place your pickup orders by calling 642-2287. We adhere to all COVID protocols for the safety of you and your loved ones. Looking to upgrade or purchase a new computer? Then visit Cyrus Technology, located number 83 Arima Old Road, Aruca. Cyrus Technology also carries a large stock of computer parts, such as hard drives, optical drives, video cards, monitors, desktops, power supplies and cases, and much more. Cyrus Technology for computer parts, new computer sales and services. Give us a call at 646-3741 or 681-8762 or email us at cyrustech@hotmail.com.
Hey folks, we're back, and joining us at this time, we're talking about energy. So we'll be talking to former energy minister and energy consultant, Mr. Kevin Ramnarine, right here on The Observer. Let's welcome at this time Mr. Kevin Ramnarine. Mr. Ramnarine, welcome. This, of course, is The Observer right here on Synergy TV with yours truly, Mikee K, and it's a pleasure to have you. Fuel price hike, I mean, it's on the lips of everyone. We're hearing it from the fishermen to all different groups. Would this increase the national poverty level?
Well, it will put a burden on the entire population, not just those persons who live below the poverty line, but those persons who live in what we define as the middle class, and then there are persons who live somewhere between the middle class and the poverty line. Most of our citizens in Trinidad and Tobago live either day to day, week to week, or month to month. Beyond that, there are those who are fortunate to have more financial resources, but the majority of our citizens are struggling to make ends meet. And we have to recall too that our public service is operating on 2013 salaries. Those salaries would be greatly eroded now. The purchasing power of those salaries would have been greatly eroded by food inflation, particularly over the last year, and fuel inflation, particularly over the last 6 years. We've had 5 increases in the price of super and 5 increases in the price of diesel in the last 5 years. So it's people are now paying more than 2 times for super and more than 2 times for diesel. So yes, there is an increasing burden on the shoulders of the population, and we are beginning to see that manifest itself in different ways. There is a lot of dislocation taking place in the society. We have to remember too that many people would have lost jobs, or many businesses would have downsized in the last 2 years because of COVID. So it is a difficult time for most of the population. And the fuel price increase, interestingly, came at a time when we were opening schools. Schools opened on Tuesday, so it seems to be a bit insensitive to have done it on the first day of school, but it is what it is, and I think that it is, as you said, it's going to mean that people have less money available to spend on other things. In the UK,
Right.
there's a debate in the UK that because the cost of living in the UK is going up, and the politicians in the opposition in the UK are saying that people have to choose between heating and eating. In Trinidad, I suppose people have to choose between fuel and food, right? So it is. Your point is definitely valid.
Yeah,
That
but let me
it is going to place a greater burden.
But let me ask you this. I mean, for the average citizen out there who's very confused about all of this, how did we get here? How did we end up here at this point?
You see, and I maintain that when we talk about the fuel increase that happened 2 days ago, we must do so that fuel increase sits in a wider context of the management of the economy. You and I have been around long enough to know that whenever oil prices are high, that is a cause for Trinidad and Tobago to feel a bit good. You would agree?
I think so, right? Okay.
Oil prices are high, and whenever oil prices are high, whether it was because of the Arab embargo of 1974, or whether it was because of the U.S. U.S. Iraq War of 1990, or whether it was because of the U.S. Iraq War of 2003, it means that high oil prices and high natural gases are a cause for Trinidad and Tobago to feel good. And the ministers of finance at the time, 1974, 1990, 2003, 2004, would have come to Parliament with a degree of exuberance and buoyancy. Now we have oil prices are high because of the Russia-Ukraine situation, but we have the opposite effect. So what has changed? Why is it that Trinidad and Tobago is not exuberant, optimistic because oil and gas prices are high? And the reason for that is that we have allowed the production of oil and gas to decline to unacceptable levels over the last 6 or 7 years. So we are exporting 60,000 barrels of oil per day, and we are importing, because we don't have a refinery again, or the refinery is not operating, we are importing 17,000 barrels of oil of fuel.
Okay.
So we're exporting 60,000 barrels per day of crude oil, and we're importing 17,000 barrels per day of fuel. And by fuel, we mean super premium kerosene, and we have to talk about kerosene on this show, diesel, jet fuel, and so on. So 6 or 7 years ago, that equation was very different. That equation was that we were exporting 80 and we were importing about 20, 21, 22. So although, we were manufacturing, I want to correct that immediately. We were manufacturing at Point-A-Pierre in the refinery for the consumption of the public about 21 or 22,000 barrels of fuel per day. So the economics of that export and consumption of fuel has changed, and the country is no longer in a position, or the country is not in a position today to underwrite the fuel subsidy. So when we were in government, when I was in government, we would spend between $4 to $5 billion a year to subsidize fuel. And Mr. Imbert has been very critical of that. But that didn't start on the 24th of May 2010, when the People's Partnership became government. Subsidization of fuel in Trinidad was happening since 1974. But between 2010 and 2015, we heavily subsidized fuel because the country was earning a lot more revenue. So the question is, why are we not earning revenue at the level that we earned between 2010 and 2015? So just to make this simple, you have a family and the father gives a monthly subvention, gives the mother $4,000 a month to run the household. The father then, his job, he loses his job, or he loses one of his jobs, and he tells the mother, "Now I could only give you $2,000 a month." That is what has happened to Trinidad and Tobago. So the removal of the subsidy is akin to that analogy of the father and the household. The question is, why did we allow the production of oil and gas to fall so low? Because revenue is a function of production and price. Revenue is not only a function of price. So although prices of oil and gas are high, the production of oil and gas is low. And I continue to make this point repeatedly until people get it. The reason that the Minister of Finance is not, or the government is not exuberant about the high oil and gas prices is because the production of both oil and natural gas in Trinidad and Tobago are low. And as a result, the government cannot support the subsidy as they used to, so they have transferred some of the burden onto the shoulders of the population. Now, there's another point I want to make. The government has been promising a lot of things over the last 4 years with regard to fuel. One of the things they have promised is a variable price at the pump. Now, if the price of oil were to fall to $70 per barrel in the next 3 to 4 months, will the government decrease the price at the pump or super and diesel? And I don't think so, because in my living memory, I've never seen a government reduce the price of fuel at the pump. It has always been going in one direction, up. So if we had a variable pricing structure at the pump, if let's say tomorrow there is a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine and the guns go silent, Mikey, you know what's going to happen to the price of oil? The price of oil is going to fall
Right.
because the geopolitical risk of the war is no longer there. So, but I don't think we will see a fall in the price of soup at the pump or a fall in the price of diesel, and we should. So that's the other point I want to make. We need to have a variable pricing mechanism at the pump, but certainly, getting back to your original point, the population is feeling the strain. A lot of families are finding it difficult to make ends meet. Food inflation is on the march up. I looked at the CSO figures for the last 12 months, and there's been a sharp increase in food and non-alcoholic beverage inflation in the period February 2021 to February 2022. It is not going to, that food inflation situation is not going to improve. It is going to get worse, because I think the worst of the food inflation is yet to hit Trinidad. Because the war between Russia and Ukraine, which is just one of the factors driving inflation, is, in my opinion, not going to end soon. It is probably going to drag out for the rest of this year,
Yeah.
and probably spill into
It's expected
2022.
to. Yeah.
So there are a lot of big questions. So the Prime Minister said that bullets are coming at Trinidad and Tobago. He used that metaphorically.
Please
Bullets
explain.
are coming at Trinidad and Tobago. I don't even remember that statement.
Yes.
He said bullets are coming at Trinidad and Tobago. My
Explain the
rebuttal
words.
to that, would be, why is Trinidad and Tobago not bulletproof? And bulletproofing Trinidad and Tobago means getting your agricultural production, your domestic agricultural production, to a point that, gives us the food security that we need. Ensuring energy security by having the refinery operational. Now, the refinery in Pointe-à-Pierre has been down for 3.5 years. The refinery in Pointe-à-Pierre is 25 plants, 25 petrochemical process plants. They have not been started for 3.5 years. Mikey, you leave your car in your garage for 3.5 years and don't start it. And then go and try to start it after 3.5 years and tell me if it starts. It wouldn't start. The engine seized. So in like manner, restarting the refinery after 3.5 to 4 years or maybe 5 years is going to be very difficult, if not impossible.
That's going to be quite a challenge. I mean, that's the reality of it. We're going to take a short break and come back. We're talking to former Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine and energy consultant right here on The Observer with yours truly, Mikee K. We're going to pay some bills and be right back.
Tired of being uncomfortable, sweating it out in a hot car? Then bring that mobile oven to Ryan Air AC, experts in auto air conditioning. We service any make or model vehicle. Free diagnostics. Most repairs done while you wait. Ryan Air AC provide warranties for replacement parts installed at our service center. We also stock a wide range of OEM replacement parts. Located number 41 Kane Farm Road, Tacarigua. To make a service appointment, give us a call at 640-5828. Ryan Air AC. Over 30 years in the auto air conditioning industry. Get your fresh and frozen meats at Dabadi Meat Mart. We provide healthy chickens at competitive prices. Also duck, lamb, goat, turkey drumsticks, pigtail, chicken parts, and more. Customers can have their fresh and frozen meats cut up free of charge. Dabadi Meat Mart, located corner Larry Sauce North Road and Eastern Main Road, Dabadi. Open Wednesday to Saturday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. You can place your pickup orders by calling 642-2287. We adhere to all COVID protocols for the safety of you and your loved ones. Looking to upgrade or purchase a new computer? Then visit Cyrus Technology, located number 83 Arima Old Road, Aruca. Cyrus Technology also carries a large stock of computer parts, such as hard drives, optical drives, video cards, monitors, desktops, power supplies and cases, and much more. Cyrus Technology for computer parts, new computer sales and services. Give us a call at 646-3741 or 681-8762 or email us at cyrustech@hotmail.com.
And we are back, folks. Welcome back. We're talking to former energy minister and energy consultant Kevin Ramnarine. Mr. Ram, let me ask you, the Trinidad and Tobago National Gas Limited is said to have made $512 million in profits for the year ending 2021. Now that's up from $6.4 million in 2020. How do you get that message out that, listen, you have to ban your belly as the consumer, take a lot of this burden, but you're seeing these sort of figures being posted? What are citizens to think?
I think the company in question, the company you're referring to is TTNGL.
Yes.
It is a subsidiary of the National Gas Company, and their profits are that the reason for that big increase in their profits is that the product that they sell, which is natural gas liquids, the prices have rebounded significantly in 2021 compared to 2020. So yes, we have certain aspects of the economy would have improved in 2021 because prices were a lot better. But generally, the government, the earning capacity of the government, remember, TTNGL is not the government. TTNGL is a state enterprise which is partially private. In fact, TTNGL in particular is mainly private right now. The government in particular has said, so I want to throw some numbers out here because you see, the thing is, Mikey, at the end of the day, if we want to make promises to the people of Trinidad and Tobago to help them, and I see that a lot of politicians are going around the country making promises, right? About helping people. At the end of the day, if you don't have money in your pocket, you can't help anybody. That's a general rule of life. You have to have money to be able to help people have a better life. And this country is scheduled to earn $43 billion in this year, 2022. In 2014, this country was earning $58 billion. So we've gone from 58 billion in 2014 to 43 billion in 2022. That is a drop of $15 billion. That $15 billion could be, if we were earning it, could be used to build schools, to pave roads, to improve the social safety net, to buy medication for the hospitals and so on. So any politician in this country who is desirous of being in politics and moving to higher office and so on, has to answer for me, how do we move from 43 to 58 or even beyond the 58? We have to address the earning capacity of the government, and the answer to that question is multifold, and it speaks to the energy sector's health, and it comes back to this issue of production of gas and oil, and it also speaks to the whole issue of diversification. But if we want to deliver to the people of this country the services and the goods that they deserve, then the country has to be earning more money. And part of the reason why the burden of the subsidy has been shifted onto the shoulders of the population, and in my respectful view, 5 increases in 6 years is, or 5 increases in 7 years, right? Let's give the man the 7 years. 5 increases in 7 years is pretty drastic. And moving super from 270 per liter to 6, what is it now? 6, almost 690. I haven't full up yet, Mikey.
Yeah, about
I had a full tank
696,
capacity.
yeah.
I had a full tank from last week, and it's on half tank right now.
On that. Let me ask you
That,
as well.
that
The narrative that is going around because the finance minister on social media, Mr. Imbert, stated that the gas prices in this country is the second lowest out of 13 Caribbean countries. Does that justify anything? Because there are those who are saying, well, if you made the comparison, how many of these other countries were oil producing countries?
well, you see, and this is the thing. It is always very difficult to compete to make that comparison. For example, you look at the minimum wage in certain Caribbean countries, and it's higher than Trinidad. Trinidad, if you convert it to US dollars, I've seen comparisons between our fuel price and the fuel price in the United States. The United States is, on a per capita basis, the United States is 4 times richer than Trinidad. The average American is 4 times richer than the average Trinidadian per capita wise. So you can't make these comparisons. You have to look at the purchasing power of a US dollar in Trinidad and the purchasing power of a US dollar in Fort Lauderdale. A US dollar in Fort Lauderdale could buy more goods and services than a US dollar in Trinidad, in my respectful view. So you can't, those comparisons are not the comparisons that should be made. I think at the end of the day, we have to, I am of the opinion, this is a personal opinion. I am of the opinion that the government is not aware of what's happening on the ground, and the government is not aware of the creeping hardship taking place in the country, particularly as a result of the COVID measures of the last 2 years. Because I live in the middle of the East-West corridor, and I have seen the businesses close down. I've seen the food establishments close down. I've seen, the gyms close down. There has been a lot of dislocation over the last 2 years. And perhaps coming at this point in time with a fuel increase, which is a significant increase, moving a whole dollar per liter more, coming as it did on the at the tail end of COVID may be a bit bad timing. And I think I got that sentiment too coming from folks in Tobago, that the Tobago economy is now starting to pick itself off the floor and dust itself off. And tourists are now starting, and then bam, on top of that now you put this fuel price increase. And I mean, let's talk a bit about diesel. Diesel is the fuel of choice for commerce.
Right.
Food delivery trucks, bread trucks, soft drink trucks, Caribbean trucks, quarries. Every piece of equipment in a quarry uses diesel. So what's going to happen is that the price of aggregate, your gravel and your sharp sand and so on, all that is going to go up. Your price of food and so on, all that is going to go up. But the minister, I would give him, at least he was measured in his increase in diesel by 50 cents. But still, compared to 7 years ago, diesel was $1.50 per liter. Diesel is now $3.91 per liter. So there must be, that cost must be transferred onto the consumer somewhere. So it is.
But he is justifying that. Sorry, he is justifying that to say that in the United States, diesel is more than twice the price that we're paying for here in this country.
Right.
All right. Listen, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. You've really enlightened us, and I know there are folks out there who needed to have the dots connected and get the answers. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Well, I'm just happy to be here, and I want to wish you all the best, and have a safe remainder of April 2022. And I hope that we could reconvene these conversations when the media review is. I think the media review is due very soon. Media review of the budget. So feel free to reach out to me.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of this evening's program. It's a pleasure having you, as always, right here on Synergy TV, The Observer, with yours truly, Mikee K. Join us again next weekend. Don't forget, Saturdays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 5 p.m. And you could also hit me up on WhatsApp at 494-0938. That number again, 494-0938. Send me a WhatsApp message. Also, we have our sales number on screen, and you can hit us up on our email address. Take care and be safe. Until next time, we're out of here.